This is no one from nowhere, and you are, and I am a spirit of God. Today I want to talk to you about Anu-Ishtar Shinar temples in biblical Uruk. First, a quick joke. What do you call the name of the late Hugh Hefner during halftime at a football game? Hugh Hefner. First, Genesis 10:10. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Erech is misspelled and is Uruk with a U, and is where the Anu District Ziggurat Temple of King Sky God of the Anunnaki, Anu, called the White Temple. It is also the home temple of the Anunnaki goddess Inanna-Ishtar. King Gilgamesh in the Epic of Gilgamesh builds the walls of Uruk for his king Anu and his queen Inanna. Whilst she falls in love with him, or for him, and wants to marry him, and he declines this, and for this, King Anu sends the bull of heaven after him and Enkidu. Next, I take you to Genesis 11:2. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Shinar is a very interesting place, to say the least. Shinar is a name for the southern region of Mesopotamia, used by the Hebrew Bible. Hebrew Šinʿār is equivalent to the Egyptian Šinɣār and Hittite Sennaár, all referring to southern Mesopotamia. Some Assyriologists considered Šinɣār a western variant or cognate of Sumer, with their original being the Sumerians' own name for their country, Ki and Gur. But this is beset with philosophical or physiological difficulties. The name Shinar occurs 8 times in the Hebrew Bible, in which it refers to Babylonia. That location of Shinar is evident from its description and encompassing both Babel and Babylon in northern Babylonia, and Uruk in southern Babylonia. In the book of Genesis 10:10, the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom, in some equivalent is to him is Ninurta, Enlil's son, and Sud, or Ninhursag, son, Ninurta. Kingdom is said to have been in Babel or Babylon, and Uruk, and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Verse 11:2 states that Shinar enclosed the plain that became the site of the Tower of Babel after the Great Flood. In Genesis 14:1-9, King Amraphel rules Shinar. It is further mentioned in Joshua 7:21, Isaiah 11:11, Daniel 1:2, and Zechariah 5:11 as a general synonym for Babylonia in the land of Shinar for the Sumerians' city. The Book of Jubilees allots in 9:3 Shinar to Ashur, the son of Shem. Jubilees 10:20 states that the Tower of Babel was built with bitumen, or asphalt, from the sea of Shinar. David Rohl theorized that the Tower of Babel was actually located in Eridu, which was once located on the coast of the Persian Gulf, where there are ruins of a massive ancient ziggurat that was worked with bitumen or asphalt. This links two locations to the Tower of Babel Story, one with Enki in Eridu and one with his son Marduk. Remember, Enki is the Trickster Anunnaki God of water and wisdom, and he will trick you any chance he gets. It has been suggested that the identification with the kingdom of Cana. The kingdom of Cana was located on the territories formerly ruled by the sovereigns of Maria, which was also ruled by Inanna-Ishtar. The rulers of Marie held the title King of Marie, Tutil, and the land of Hannah, since Marie was abandoned after its destruction by Hammurabi in 1759 BC, and Tutil certainly was not part of the territories of the new state. The location of Cana is identified with the territories around Marie. Its capital, Terko, was located 45 kilometers north of Marie, below the junction of the Khabur River, roughly at the site of the modern Syrian town of Asherah. Asherah also identifies with Inanna-Ishtar. The Hannians were a nomadic tribal confederacy based around the middle Euphrates on the Syrian-Iraqi border. The Hannian people had a semi-nomadic life characterized by seasonal movement of sheep herds, never too far from the rivers and watering places, returning to their settlements for the harvest season. Based on this history of time events of origin and proper names, evidence were they related to the other Western Semitic peoples known as the Amorites, which synchronize with Amaru, son of Anu, and also, in some texts, son of Enlil. He ran the Amorite kingdom, which was by far the largest in the area. And he also is identified with Adad and Ishkur, found in Genesis 17:1. This also identifies with the Habaru, which some people say that is the original name of the Hebrew, originally coming from the deserts of Syria. The contact with the settled population leads to the gradual transformation of the population into more settled rural communities. One dedicatory inscription preserved in later copies records the return of Marduk's statue from Hannah by Ugum II, a later Kassite king, most probable the first ruler over most of Babylon. The part of the inscription that mentions Kani reads, "I sent to the distant land, to the land of the Hianans, and they conducted Marduk and Sarpanitu back to me. I returned Marduk and Sarpanitu, the ones who love my reign, to the Esagil and Babylon. I returned them to the temple that Shamash, the sun god, had confirmed to me in my investigation." Uruk is the type of site for the Uruk period. Uruk played a leading role in the early urbanization of the Sumerians in Sumer in the mid-4th millennium BC. By the final phase of the Uruk period around 3100 BC, the city may have had 40,000 residents with 80 to 90,000 people living in the area. And it was the biggest urban area in the world at that time. King Gilgamesh, according to the chronology presented at the Sumerian Kings list, ruled Uruk in the 27th century BC. In myth and literature, Uruk was famous as the capital city of Gilgamesh, hero of the Epic of Gilgamesh. Most scholars identify Uruk as the biblical Erech found in Genesis 10:10, whereas King Gilgamesh builds the walls of the city for Inanna-Ishtar and King Anu. The second city founded by Nimrod in Shinar. Nimrod is also in some areas with some people synchronized with Ninurta. According to Uruk, was founded by the king En-Merkar in the Sumerian kings list. Though the kings list mentions a father before him, the epic En-Merkar and the Lord of Aratta relates that En-Merkar constructed the house of heaven, or the Inanna, for the goddess Inanna in the Eanna District of Uruk in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh builds the city wall around Uruk and is king of the city. Uruk went through several phases of growth from the early Uruk period 4000 to 3500 BC to the late Uruk period 3500 to 3100 BC. The city was formed when two smaller Ubaid settlements merged. Ubaid period is pictured with serpents milking their young infant childs. The temple complexes at their cores became the Eanna District and the Anu District, dedicated to Inanna and Anu, respectively. The Anu District was originally called Unug-Kulaba or Kulab, or Unug-Kulaba. Prior to merging with the Inanna District, Kulababa dates to the Eridu period, when it was one of the oldest and most important cities of Sumer. Enki came down from the heavens and established the first city on earth called Eridu. And from this we get the Eridu Genesis. The Inanna District was composed of several buildings and spaces for workshops, and it was called and walled off from the city by Gilgamesh. By contrast, the Inanna or Anu district was built on a terrace with a temple at the top. It is clear that it was dedicated to Inanna from the earliest Uruk period throughout the history of the city. The rest of this city was composed of typical courtyard houses grouped by professional occupants in districts around the Eanna and Anu districts. Unlike the Inanna district, the Anu district consisted of single massive terrace. The Anu Ziggurat was dedicated to the Sumerian sky god Anu. Sometime in the Uruk III period, the massive white temple was built atop of the ziggurat. Under the northwest edge of the ziggurat in the Uruk VI period structure, the stone temple had been discovered. The stone temple was built of limestone and asphalt bitumen on a podium of rammed earth and plastered with lime mortar. The podium itself was built over a woven reed mat called gippar, which was ritually used as a nuptial bed. The gippar was a source of generative power, which then radiated upward to the heavens from the structure. The structure of the stone temple further developed some mythological concepts from the Enuma Elish. The Enuma Elish is quite interesting, and this temple, the White Temple, was perhaps a ritual-based, and it involved dedications and draining areas for the channels, tanks, and vessels found there. The structure later was ritually destroyed, covered with alternating layers of clay and stone. then excavated and filled with mortar sometimes later. The Anu district began with a massive mound topped by a cella during the Uruk period 4000 BC. The earliest phase used architectural features, and it was said to have a terrazzo floor beneath it, kind of like a marble floor seen today. The White Temple could have been seen from a great distance across the plain of Sumer. It was elevated and covered in gypsum plaster, which reflected sunlight like a mirror. In addition to this, the Temple Anu, White Temple Ziggurat had a monumental limestone-paved staircase and trough running parallel to the staircase was used to drain the ziggurat. The Inanna District is historically significant as both for writing and monumental public architectural that emerged from Samaria, along with many things like art, writing, the wheel, language, etc. The combination of these two developments places Eanna as arguably the first true city and civilization in human history. The first building of Eanna Stone Cone Temple was a Mosaic Temple and was built in period 6 over a pre-existing Ubaid temple and is enclosed by a limestone wall with an elaborate system. The Stone Cone Temple, named for the mosaic of colored stones and cones driven into the adobe brick facade, may be the earliest water cult in Mesopotamia. Inanna-Ishtar is synchronized with the Eanna and means the house of the heavens, also referred to the temple of Inanna-Ishtar, and was an ancient Sumerian temple in Uruk. This district and area in ancient Sumeria, Mesopotamia, was known as the residence and homes of Inanna-Ishtar and King Anu, king of the princely offspring we call the Anunnaki. It is mentioned several times in the Epic of Gilgamesh and elsewhere. The evolution of the Anunnaki gods to whom the temple was dedicated is the subject of much study and videos like this one. The Epic of Gilgamesh, from Tablet 1. He carved on a stone stele all of his toils, and he built the wall of Uruk, the walls of the sacred Eanna Temple, the holy sanctuary. 2/3 of him, Gilgamesh, was divine. 1/3 of him was human. Approach Eanna, the dwelling of Ishtar. Thank you so much for watching today's video, and always remember that you are and I am a spirit of God. Peace and love be with you all.